Welcome to Sales Training for Podcasters, the podcast designed to better your sales process. We'll be sharing tools, tips, and techniques, whether you love sales or hate sales. If you've got a product or service to sell and a podcast, you've come to the right place. Now, here's your hosts, podcast strategists, Doug Sandler and JJ Flazane.
Welcome back to Sales Training for Podcasters. I'm JJ Flazane.
Hey, and I'm Doug Sandler. Man, we have never been this close together as we've been podcasting, have we?
Probably not. We could be touching lips and noses as we record today's episode.
It's the Eskimo podcast.
So in case our sound is a little bit different than normal, we had a little bit of Wi-Fi issue, but the show must go on. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Kimberly Weitkamp. She is not only a marketing strategist and copywriter, she's part of our Ultimate Podcast Mastermind, and she is the host of the Audience Converter podcast for community leaders. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thanks so much for having me, Doug and JJ. Always a pleasure to talk with you guys.
I love how, I've had you pretty much on every show that I've had. Nice Guys on Business, I believe. BizWiz, probably the Turnkey podcast we've done live. I mean, your information that you bring every time is just such a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited to be able to take a dive into some of this stuff with you. I love having you in our mastermind, and I love the value that you provide, not just in sharing your message, but in the stuff that you do with everybody in the community. So I'm excited to kind of take a deep dive into the stuff that you do and why you do it successfully.
I'm excited as well, but you'll never get me on your other podcast because I know nothing about cars.
True. Don't worry. I'm not going to be on there either unless it's riding in cars, specifically car. So Kimberly, before we get into what you do and how that helps everybody who's listening, let's talk about your relationship with selling and sales.
So my relationship with selling and sales is, I guess, a beginner status, but not really. I've been working for myself for about 5 years, but I don't have any formal sales training. Sales was kind of one of those things I stumbled upon a lot in the beginning and realized, it's all about helping other people, which of course is my whole approach to what I do as well. So once I made that connection, then I was able to kind of approach sales from, well, what can I help people with today? What is it that I'm able to help you achieve or acknowledge or figure out? And then, what's the best way forward to do that?
I want to go back to that word that you used when it came to describing yourself in sales, and you used the word beginner. And while I hear what you're saying from a maybe a mindset perspective where you feel like you are, from a chronology perspective, you are totally anything but a beginner. You're schooled at your product and services. You know when to talk. You know how to build relationships. And I think just some tweaks along the way probably was all you needed in order to even do better at conversion. So I want to go back and I want to define that word beginner if we could. So when you say beginner, tell me what you felt like. I mean, oftentimes when I hear that, I think, oh, that means I probably didn't have any formal training, so I wasn't really good at selling, or I didn't really approach selling from a systems perspective. Is that right?
That is absolutely 100% right.
So then let's walk through where you feel like, I guess, from the beginning part of you. I mean, you always realized you had to do something when it came to selling, right? I mean, you always realized that sales was a part of what you were going to need to do, whether it was selling a product or service or sell an idea.
Oh, absolutely. Sales is a part of running a business, just like marketing is a part of running a business. But it's one of those things that I had no background and no training, but I kind of dived deep into, I opened my business doing what I'm doing without really realizing that I was going to open a business. I didn't really have any background or training or formal education around it. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why I started my show as well, is because so many of us, we get into what we're doing because we're passionate about it, but we don't really have the business side figured out.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to the whole idea of writing a book. Writing a book is to write a successful book, meaning one that gets into the hands of a lot of people that are out there. It's probably 20% writing and 80% marketing. And I think it's the same with our business. It has a lot to do with, what you're saying, who you're saying it to, but that doesn't mean that you can neglect the idea, not that you did at all, but it doesn't mean that one can neglect the idea of, well, you actually have to do some conversion, whether it's through conversation or through a call to action on your show, to a lead magnet, or any part of the process, there's got to be some conversion. So would you say that conversion was even though your show was called The Audience Converter, do you think conversion from a prospect to a customer, was that a challenging thing for you, or was it more of your relationship with selling? maybe just help define that a little bit more closely, so those in our audience might be able to relate to, oh, wow, I know exactly what Kimberly's talking about, because that's how I felt about selling also.
Yeah, I'm a person who likes to have scripts and templates and a process in place. And until meeting you guys, until launching this particular business, I had kind of just cobbled everything together. I was like, oh, I saw something here, I saw something there. That sounds like it's interesting. All right, I'm going to create something based off of what others have done that's not really putting myself into it. But then after working, of course, with you and JJ, I was able to kind of put a process in place and map out what that would look like for sales. My whole purpose behind launching this particular podcast was to launch a new business for a new audience. And I was using the podcast as a way to grow my network, which it did beautifully. It definitely fulfilled my goal. It's done amazing things for me to open a lot of doors. But when I first got started, I was just kind of like, oh, what's the process? I need to figure it out. And I think part of it is you always think that you need to figure more out than you actually need to figure out, and that you have more basics and fundamentals in place than you think you do.
So I want to tell people a little bit more about your process. So you help people with marketing, but different than sales, right? Of course, because the marketing piece is getting the word out there and about building a relationship through, let's say, email marketing, or the way you do a nurture sequence, or introductory emails to a potential buyer. Tell people what your business is and then why you decided to start the podcast.
Absolutely. So my business is helping people get their message in front of the right audience at the right time. And I do that through words. So I help people craft the right words and the right message and in the right language that speaks to their audience to bring them a step closer to working with them. So mostly what I do is I help my clients figure out their ideal clients, like who is it that they're really serving. And I approach marketing in a very different way than a lot of people describe it. My approach to marketing is getting your message in front of the people already looking for your help. So old school marketing is I'm going to go out and convince a bunch of people that I've got a solution for a problem they don't know they have. That's where a lot of the terms and stuff come from in marketing as well, because it was the old days when like you'd get a bunch of mail in your physical mailbox and it had to be eye-catching enough and disruptive enough for you to stop and actually want to read it. I work strictly online. So the entire approach of how people interact with companies and how they search for solutions, they know they have a problem first. So creating a marketing strategy, a marketing plan, and of course, the entire marketing campaign and all of the words and, the emails and the social and anything else that you're going to throw in there. It's all based on, well, what is your audience struggling with? How can you help them overcome that? So my approach to marketing has always been, well, what do they need help with? How can I help them? And so your marketing serves as a tool to help them overcome a particular problem and then introduce them to the solution.
And your specialty, though, is all written word in emails, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then, so now you started your podcast because you wanted to reach more of your ideal customers, or you wanted to teach people about this idea of using email marketing strategically to an audience that's already looking for you?
Yeah, so I launched my podcast because I started doing this kind of work for a very different industry. And I thought podcasting would be really cool. So I went in and launched a podcast, but it wasn't this one. And that was more about the skills, right? That was more about, okay, what are the mechanics of actually creating copy? Those are just the words that you put into a marketing material. And so I wanted to reach a new audience. And that was entrepreneurs, coaches, people who are looking to build a community. So I launched the podcast to do that. And I was searching for people who are looking to build communities. I've had so much success and so many leaps and bounds by being a part of a community. And I love other people who are looking to build community around what they do. So just like me, right? A lot of those people struggle with the business side of stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to launch a podcast around the business side of stuff. So some of what we talk about is marketing. We also talk about a lot of other parts that help you build your business.
What do you think some of the stuff that is traditionally things that entrepreneurs might be struggling with that you help solve? Because I remember just those first couple of meetings that we had, and when I would hear the word copywriter, Number one, I really didn't understand what a copywriter was until we had that first conversation and exactly understanding how you do what you do. But then it was like, you don't know what you don't know. And I've come to this, and I've shared this story with you many times, and I know, but our audience may not be familiar with it. So I'll just humor me for a second while I explain it. We went through a launch, and during this launch, Strickland and I, my partner in our Turnkey podcast with this particular launch, we probably had, let's say, 7, 8 emails put together. These would be emails that were going out to people that we want to get on our list, lead magnets and landing pages and different things. And when we brought Kimberly in to, hey, can you just take an eyeball at this? I mean, literally there was 20 blank spaces that we had to fill in that we weren't even thinking of. The most poignant of those blank spaces was that series of emails that went out on cart close day. And I attribute the win of 50% more sales absolutely to the stuff that you put in that sequence of emails that went out. Talk to the people that are in our community that don't know what they don't know, and help. I don't mean to tell you to sell your services, but help them understand why it's important to at least begin the conversation with somebody that is an expert at doing something that they don't do as a business owner.
Absolutely. So it's very interesting that you said a phrase that I have countered so many times, and this is why I avoid using my own title. And that is, I don't know what a copywriter is. Or if somebody has heard the term copywriter, they think I do something with trademark law, which please no. So what I tell people I do is, a lot of people I feel struggle with getting started. They don't know where to start. They know they should be doing something. They know things should be easier. They know marketing is something they want to be doing, but they don't know how to get started. And I think another myth is that they feel there's only one particular way to do it. I have had so many clients come to me who are like, yeah, this is what I do, and this is who I serve, and this is how I help them, but I don't know how to say that in marketing speak. And I explained to them, look, you don't say that in marketing speak. What you just said is exactly how you explain what you do, because that's going to attract the right people. That's going to speak to the people who are your ideal clients. And you're not looking to meet and connect with everybody. You're just looking to meet and connect with the right people. And so your story is pretty much almost every first conversation I have is people, I think the number one problem they struggle with is they don't know how to get started or what they even need to do to start that process.
So besides coming to your show and listening to the Audience Converter podcast for community leaders, everybody go listen to Kimberly's show. What other things would you have for them quickly to go check out that might get them started?
Get them started with marketing strategy?
Yeah. Or just learning about all the things that they don't know in terms of what they need in their email sequencing, in their onboarding, in their nurture sequence, and all these different things we're talking about to help convert more of their either listeners or people that they interact with to become clients.
Absolutely. So I would say the number one thing people can go and get is if you go to theaudienceconverter.com/giveaway, I have a free guide. It's on how to use a welcome series. And I find that most people don't know where to get started, but they realize they need to start somewhere. So why not start with the brand new people on your list? They haven't experienced you. They don't know anything about you. So it's your perfect opportunity to build the right relationship from the very beginning for anyone who hasn't connected with you in the past. Then, of course, there's other ways for you to connect with and put the people who are already on your list through that process. But with a welcome series, you literally create a custom experience for brand new subscribers to your list. So they understand more about who you are, what you do. And what it really does is it increases the engagement of subscribers so that more people see your messages, more people open your messages, and of course, more people buy from your messages, increasing the lifetime value of your customer.
Okay, so make sure everyone to get that. And again, check out her podcast because Kimberly has a lot of things to share and teach you that you could be using as a community leader to convert your audience into paying clients and customers. Kimberly, you and we've been together since, you in our mastermind since about almost a year. We're coming up on, I believe, a year. And
nearing that, yeah.
Yeah, we're nearing a year. Can you just speak to a little bit of why you decided to join us and then sort of the benefit of being in our podcast mastermind?
Absolutely. So as I said, I'm a person who wants a plan, right? I help other people make plans for their stuff, but it's incredibly difficult for people, especially me, to make plans for myself and to see where I'm missing things because we're so close to what we do. We often overlook and can't see where we need help. So as I said, I launched the podcast because I wanted to expand my network. I wanted to get into new audiences for my new company, for the new ideal clients that I wanted to meet. And I didn't really have a plan. I was like, I'm not really sure what I should be doing. And Doug and Strick helped me launch this particular podcast. We're nearing 100 episodes. I can't actually believe that number. And the process of setting it up, the thought work that they helped me kind of go through to figure out what the exact goal was really helpful. And then I was like, okay, I want continuing support. I want continuing help. I want those processes and systems. So just being a part of the mastermind is having access to people who've actually made a success out of their podcast. Like my whole plan, I love Doug's guest to client strategy. I definitely employ that in using my own podcast. And I kind of wanted more of the step by step. I wanted more of the, okay, well, what do I do next? What's my big plan? And being a part of the mastermind has helped me figure out pretty much anything that I've done. I know a big success story for JJ was using my podcast to convert 66% of a room at an event that I held. And it helped, having the podcast and having that in place kind of helped me jumpstart and leap over a bunch of milestones I thought I wouldn't reach for 3 or 4 years. I had always wanted to hold live events, but I thought, it's going to take, it's going to take 3, 4, or 5 years from the time I opened this business. And I did it 10 months after I opened the business. And part of that was because of all the connections and all of the help I'd had with the mastermind and also using the podcast as a tool to promote it.
Yes, it's a success. I love you sharing that story, especially with everybody else, because of the attainability aspect of it. It's when you're starting out, people think they have to reach a certain number of downloads or a certain number of prospects or a certain number of whatever. We have these arbitrary random numbers. And especially Doug and I talk about it all the time. Downloads equal dollars. They do not equal dollars. Conversion does. And even if conversion is happening from your podcast or from your email list or from in-person meetings, it doesn't really matter. It's just moving those people to the next step, which you did beautifully in your 3-day live event where you converted, like you said, 66% of the room into a year-long program, which was a pretty big leap financially for you. And again, it was something that had someone not of your dedication would have looked at it and said, you know what, I'm not doing this. This isn't worth my time. This is disappointing or frustrating. And you just decided, you know what, I'm going to do this because it's a learning opportunity. I've committed to it. It's a way for me to practice my material, to get it recorded. And then lo and behold, it was screaming success, which made everyone else in the mastermind really excited because again, we come into these businesses thinking that it's about the numbers. It's about whatever number, really. And again, not forgetting that we can make a lot of numbers in money and in zeros from one person. And all you need is one person to say yes to an offer that you have that's significant in order for you to make a huge financial shift. So thank you for sharing that. And, one of the things that we do with our mastermind members is invite them to any of the live events, whether it be live in person or live virtual events that we've been holding. And we most recently did a sales training and marketing for podcasters. And, it's been about a year almost that you've been with us. And by now someone might be thinking, well, Kimberly, don't you know everything that they teach or that they do? And why, what did you get out of this event? This is like your 3rd virtual event with them. And aren't they repeating the same things over and over? Can you speak a little bit about what you might have learned or were able to apply differently at the last, because this is now a product and a program that we're offering, sales training and marketing for podcasters. What did you think about that?
Yeah. So, just to go back real fast for anyone who's obsessing over those random numbers, right? Oh, how many downloads, how many this, how many that? I had, one of the success stories was somebody who heard about my podcast, went, listened to a couple of episodes, heard the ad for my event, came to the event and became worth like $12,000 or something. And part of what you guys taught at the sales training and marketing for podcasters was that process, was the idea of how do you map that out? How do you map that strategy? How do you figure out what a win is going to look like for you? As I said, I'm a person who likes a system. I like a process. And inside that training, you really help people kind of figure out and see, well, I need a strategy in place. And here's a couple of the moving parts. And here's how you might want to lay it all out for yours. So that was really powerful. Like that one happened afterwards, but it was just a really great reminder for me. But then also just having that opportunity to listen to you guys again. I don't know what the exact statistic is, but it's something like you need to hear something 3 to 5 times before it really sinks in. So it's really valuable for me to keep going to the virtual events, to hear you guys teach and do something again. And one of the powerful things for me, of course, is just mapping out that process, is taking a moment to think, okay, this is what I've done so far. What do I want to do next? So I had that process in place for where I was as a business owner before, but now it's time for me to remap it.
It's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about all of the times I've reread a book that I have read before, whether it's Think and Grow Rich, The Big Leap, Who Moved My Cheese, 3 books that I have read and reread several times. And I think about like where I am in my life as it relates to learning things. And the books mean different things to me depending on where I am in my life. And the whole idea of sitting in a mastermind and hearing the same information possibly over again that I've already heard, I don't think that falls in a category of, well, I've been there before, so why do I need to hear this again? So I agree with you. You're at a position, what's the expression? The teacher will appear when the student is ready. And what's so great about watching your growth over the last year, and we've known each other for more than a year, just because I launched your show originally, so 100 episodes ago. So that has to be, what, a year and a half or something like that? Maybe even 2 years?
December of 2019.
Okay, got it. So it's been about a year and a half.
Good time to launch a show.
Yeah, awesome. So what's great about it is that you have learned different things in your journey exactly when you needed to learn them. I want to go back to the sales thing because I think this is an important maybe moment that people that are in our community might get that thing in their head saying, oh, I get it. And now maybe the time for me to understand sales as it pertains to processes. Never let perfect be the enemy of done. You'll never learn everything about the sales process. Nobody ever does. I mean, I've been selling for 40 plus years. And I look at that and think, oh my gosh, I was forcing sales on my customers, when I was in my teens and early 20s, when I first started the sales game. And now I'm a lot more relaxed in that environment. I feel like a lot less attached to the result of yes, and more attached to let me just make sure that I'm doing all the actions. So can you talk about that when it comes to your own process? Never let perfect be the enemy of done. I know you are truly gifted in what you do as an audience converter, as a podcaster, as a business owner, but we're all learning when it comes to sales. So are there some things that you are still working on when it comes to selling that you would like to maybe share some wisdom with my audience, our audience, so that they know, hey, you're in the right spot now, because you may not know everything, which is totally cool.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for that feedback, Doug. And, for me, it is an ongoing process. So we were on a session with Doug and JJ with the mastermind. And I said something to the effect of, well, I need a follow-up process for all of my guests. And JJ asked, well, why? What do you want out of it? And that kind of just solidified for me and reminded me, well, everything that you do needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a goal. So what I really want is I'm working on creating the more detailed follow-up process for the right people who come into the guest seat, right? As Doug has talked about a lot, you have people who come in for authority, for community, for sales, for guests. And so it's more about, for me, the process that I'm refining now is refining who shows up in that guest seat. And the process I'm refining is, how do I continue to communicate with them after the interview and after the episode goes live, and plotting out what I want that interaction to look like. So it's when I first got started, it was all one-on-one. Everything I did was custom. Everything was highly personalized. I didn't do anything in a group setting. And within 10 months, right now, I've got my own masterminds. I've got a couple of group programs. I've got a couple of group trainings available. So now the type of person I want in that guest seat is being redefined. And that's kind of how it works when you grow as a business owner, and when you grow as a person, and you grow as a podcaster, because you're always going to be changing what you need and what you want out of the show. So for me, the process that I'm not necessarily struggling with it, but the process that I am redefining for myself is, who is the ideal guest to have in that guest seat? And what is that process for guiding them along the path? Because at the end result might be different than what it used to be.
Where do you want your podcast and your business to be in a year from now that's different from where it is?
Oh, that's a good question. So where do I want my podcast to be? I want my podcast to be in more listeners' ears. As I said, right, downloads aren't everything, absolutely. But I do want to be able to expand the community that I reach. That's always my goal, is to be the resource that more people want to see. The goals for my podcast are just to expand the reach and audience, expand the community. And for the business, I'm a community builder myself. So it's building more opportunities for more community interaction with me and with the different types of clients. So I think in a year from now, I'd like to have more group and community members and less one-on-one type interactions, because I want to be able to make a bigger impact and help more people in a less amount of time.
Great goal. I concur and agree. And while I keep saying downloads don't equal dollars and downloads don't matter, of course, we all want more downloads. We want more organic, real downloads. We don't just want numbers. And I think that's the most important message people do need to hear, because I want to increase my numbers too. But again, I want them to be real people, real listeners, real interested people, not some way to use Twitter or some kind of bot that's going to get me an increase in numbers, but they're not real. They're not real listeners.
Absolutely.
Because you want to build that community, you want to know when you look at your numbers that those are people, not clicks, right?
Yes. And, when I first heard from Doug that not that downloads don't matter, but that, you can have a successful podcast without downloads in the millions, I was so incredibly excited, because I don't have a podcast that has downloads in the millions, but that's okay. Because I know that the people who keep coming back to listen each week are the right kind of people. As JJ mentioned, I held a live event and I didn't have 150 people in the room, but that didn't matter, because the people I had in the room were the exact right people to have in the room. That's why I was able to close so many of them. So it's about making sure that I'm getting my podcast more into the hands of the people who are really looking for it. So when I say I want to expand my downloads, it's definitely, I want to expand my downloads and be more present for more of the right people.
So would it be safe to say that by the end of this year, this first year with us, that you will have doubled your income and doubled your downloads?
Well, I'd have to go look at the numbers, but probably pretty close if I haven't looked at the numbers here recently, because that's kind of tying into downloads aren't everything. I don't want to obsessively track them, but for sure my numbers have gone up, my downloads have gone up. And at the end of the day, I'm also building a huge resource library. I have lost count of the number of times people have been like, yeah, I'm really struggling with this. I don't know where to get started, but I don't have the money to hire anyone. Like, here, go listen to this episode. It'll be really powerful for you. And they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. So just being able to have that resource and have that ability to help somebody, even if they're not ready to take that next step, has been really valuable to me. But have I doubled my income? If not doubled, pretty darn close to it, but probably yes by the end of the year. We've got a couple months left. And doubled my downloads. Yes, I'm pretty sure of that as well.
I kind of misspoke. I didn't mean double your whole income. I mean, in terms of your investment, you doubled your investment that you made. Would that be a more safe, accurate statement?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
But I like the fact that she answered it based upon income, and that's really good. That's really good too. I like that too.
Well, and I ask that because, there are people that are listening to this that they're either podcasters or they're thinking about becoming podcasters. And one of the things that we did when we started the Ultimate Podcast Mastermind was we wanted to focus on people who were already podcasting. It wasn't for beginners. And you weren't a beginner. You had a podcast already and you started another one. But in terms of how long you've been doing it, or at the beginning stages of being a podcaster, you definitely sort of fell into that. And so just speak to anyone who's listening in terms of where they are in the stages of podcasting. The reason why we said we wanted podcasters, because we wanted people who are committed to podcasting, people who are going to show up every week and do their show, be committed to the information and putting it out there, and also just committed to this platform versus thinking it was some get rich quick scheme. And then after 10 or 12 episodes, they were out of here.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. I'm a marketer. That is my bread and butter. That is what I do for other people. That is what I help other people plan out. So whenever anybody comes to me and they're like, yeah, I need some emails so that I can double my income tomorrow, I say, good luck with that. Have fun. Goodbye. Because it's a process. You have to plan it out. And there's so much testing involved. And there's so many other pieces that you need to know before you can say, okay, I want to, one email is going to make me X. And it's the truth, right? One email can make you $10,000. One event can make you $100,000, but there's all the pieces before that. So when I got started with you guys, I think I was 6 months into my podcasting journey for this particular show. I'd pretty much started focusing on it exclusively. The other show is on indefinite hiatus. And I knew that it was my best opportunity. Podcasting opens so many doors. Every single client I have had in the last year has come because I met somebody in a community who was either a podcaster or looking to be a guest Or my big bring to the group was, hey, I have a podcast. So that's what started and opened all of the conversations. People were like, oh, you have a podcast? I want to learn more about that. So for me, I knew that my podcast was the way to go forward. And I knew that from the people I'd met in the podcasting community, there were just so many opportunities and so many great people who wanted to help each other out, that I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my podcast. I want my podcast to be a very valuable tool, resource, marketing option, and of course, to be something that brings in clients. So I decided to join you guys because I was like, yeah, I want to plan. I want to process. I don't want to figure it out myself because that's no fun. And I did that for 4.5 years with my other business and didn't have a lot to show for it. I would say easily since I started focusing on, I launched my business during the pandemic. I literally consider the day I opened my doors to be about 4 days before the first lockdowns happened. And I had my best year ever. Now, did I make $1 million? No, I didn't. But it was my best year in business ever. And I've been in business for 5.5 years now. And this was a completely brand new community. It was a completely brand new audience. I brought almost no assets and no members from the previous industry because it was an industry that had a lot of NDAs, which means I couldn't claim to have worked for any of my clients, which was very annoying. And one of the reasons I got out. So I knew that my podcast was the way forward. I knew that it was something I wanted to focus on. It was a lot of fun. It was a great opportunity for me to meet amazing people just by saying, hey, I have a podcast, but also by getting amazing people in the guest seat too.
So Kimberly, again, you're a wealth of information, and I know that many of our clients or the listeners in this community will want to reach out to you to ask questions about, how do I do that? What's it all about? Where can they find out more information about you? And how can they engage your services if they do want to take that leap?
Absolutely. So you can learn more about me at theaudienceconverter.com. That is also where you will find all of I believe we're at 89 past episodes of the Audience Converter podcast for community leaders. And if you want to reach out to me, contact at theaudienceconverter.com. And if you're looking to have a quick conversation, just mention you heard me on the Sales Training for Podcasters podcast.
Yes, they did. Thank you, Kimberly. We appreciate you sharing your successes, your story to help inspire those that are listening at any stage of podcasting, and to know that the sales game doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to mean you have an audience of 1 million people, and you can make significant increases in income quickly when you ask for the right people to be in your audience, both through the work that Kimberly does and in focusing in the way that we do with sales training and marketing for podcasters. Thank you again, Kimberly, for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a fantastic time.
Thanks, Kimberly. All right, everybody. See you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to Sales Training for Podcasters. To get additional information and to access more amazing content that will boost your sales game, visit salestrainingforpodcasters.com. Hey, do us a favor. Rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thanks for listening.